Welcome back to the School Transportation Nation podcast. This is Ryan Gray, Editor-in-Chief, joined today by Taylor Ekbatani, our Senior Editor, and want to extend a thank you to TransFinder, who, along with every episode, is sponsoring this School Transportation Nation podcast. TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing, and also sponsored by IC Bus. The next generation can change everything. A little bit later, Taylor will be talking to one of our garage stars this month in the August magazine issue, Scotty McKenzie, shop foreman for Fulton County Schools in Atlanta, Georgia. But before we get to our episode, here's a message from one of our sponsors.
Today's tech tip is brought to you by IC Bus. The next generation can change everything. Looking for ways to improve your on-time performance and reduce operating costs? All IC Bus CE Series school buses come standard with factory-installed telematics devices, including a 5-year connectivity subscription. Customers gain access to on-command connection, an industry-leading remote diagnostic solution, providing data that is visible and easy to understand and actionable. With OCC, your district will have visibility to vehicle health and performance data at your fingertips, including EV-specific information like state of charge and estimated range. Learn more about standard capabilities of their connected vehicles at icbus.com. That's icbus.com.
Okay, Taylor, so big news last week on a couple fronts, but really punctuated by the official announcement from Bluebird that Britton Smith, president since May of last year, 2023, is going to be assuming the CEO position as Phil Horlock retires for the second time at the end of September. So that was, as I write in the article, you can check it out at stnonline.com, when Bluebird named Britton the president last year. The writing really kind of was on the wall. We thought, I wonder if he's going to go ahead and succeed Phil, and certainly that was the case.
Yeah, Ryan, and in reading your article, it really sounds like Bluebird is making moves, right? So they just announced lap shoulder seatbelt standard on school buses, along with other safety technology. And now they announce Britton, like you said, it was kind of, speculation. Is he going to become the new CEO? So he's replacing Phil Horlock, who's officially retiring now. He retired and then came back. So it seems like a lot of people in the school bus industry kind of jump like that. But yeah, officially, you said September 29th, Britton will be taking the CEO title. Exactly.
And then, so there was, Phil had retired. That's when Bluebird had tapped Matt Stevenson to come in. And that really, he brought in Britton as well as some others to the executive team. Matt didn't stay long. He only stayed about a year or so. But Britton was initially tapped as a senior vice president and chief strategy officer to really lead the evolution of the electric school bus. And under Phil's watch, Phil was the one who, oversaw the launch of electric school buses. And before that, really was the one responsible for the growth of the propane product. Back when Phil started in 2010, he actually came in as the CFO and chief administrative officer. But if you all remember, Bluebird had its initial new propane offering, and they switched and went to working with Roush Cleantech and their propane autogas system. So obviously a big relationship were there with Ford. Phil came from Ford. So he really has manned the ship and was really the face of Bluebird for over a decade, for over a dozen years or so. And then when he retired, I think things didn't really work out the way that the board originally thought. And they made an adjustment there. Phil came back. but certainly with Britain, who was tapped again to really oversee the expansion of the electric vehicle offerings from Bluebird. And we've seen that certainly with a lot of the financial numbers. I report in the article on our website that essentially since Britain was named president last year, the stock's doubled or nearly doubled. And Phil, in his statement last week when the announcement was made, mentions that. He says that Britain really, was responsible for a lot of that growth. And, Phil had implemented what he called a rigorous transition plan. So again, they knew that they thought they had their man with Britain, and he hit all the benchmarks. And certainly, if you look at the stock, that was going to be a big driver of this.
Yeah, Ryan. And we also have an interview Tony did with Britton Smith on our website. And that was during the STN Expo in Reno just this past July. And they talk, more. But yeah, I wonder too if Bluebird's having such a good outlook because they are also the ones operating propane. Right? No other company OEM is offering propane at this time. And it really seems like a viable option for school districts.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because, obviously we've talked a lot about Cummins and their decision earlier this year to forego the propane product with their agnostic engine that comes out late next year, really full production, 2026. An interesting decision for them. But we have seen propane overall output numbers dip. And that's really aligned with the priorities of the Clean School Bus Program, where you have, 98%, give or take, of all these funds so far through the first, essentially 2.5, 3 years of the program and the different rebates and competitive grant programs that have rolled out, really prioritizing electric school buses. And that's not a surprise. I mean, that's where the headlines are. That's what really moves the needle in terms of the public discourse with reducing emissions. But we know that propane, it obviously has its benefits. You factor in using renewable propane, and while it's not a zero emissions fuel, it's near zero. And there's some other things that we've reported on in the past. The ongoing development of dimethyl ether, for example, that's not ready for prime time yet, but that shows some promise of bringing propane with renewable propane to a negative carbon index. We know that diesel is 90% or more cleaner than it was over a decade ago, and EPA really started in earnest their heavy and medium duty emission regulations that also target school buses. I saw a report actually. And we talked about it a little bit last week that you wrote, Taylor, on the EPA Office of Inspector General, who released their second audit on the EPA Clean School Bus Program. And they mentioned that diesel buses, I think, are like 60 times cleaner today than they used to be. So there's a lot of that going on right now. And I think that how I'm reading it is, and from a comment that Cummins made when we were at our STN Expo Indianapolis in June, that they think that they're on the path to meeting and exceeding those EPA GHG Phase 3 regulations for diesel, that diesel will be a compelling product going forward. And now we know, as I talked about with Tony last week, that the engine and vehicle manufacturers are going to have some difficult decisions on the markets where they place those diesel school buses. And I think the same thing with Bluebird with the propane. There's certain states where propane, like diesel, is really a non-starter in terms of the existing emission regulations. You look at states like California and New York. We've talked about with their mandates and the states that follow the California Air Resources Board regulations for school buses. Not that you can't operate propane school buses in those states, but the funding mechanisms are not there. And certainly in this potpourri of funding right now, that's really what's driving the acceptance. So again, like we've been talking about, it's going to be really interesting to see once that EPA money dries up. And as I write in our August issue, certainly we have this presidential election coming up that's really going to dictate how electric school buses, I think, will proceed in terms of the funding available.
Yeah, to tease my interview a little bit with Scotty, they are running propane down in Fulton County, and they have like 300, give or take, propane school buses that he was talking about. So he kind of breaks it down, the maintenance on those, the savings that they're seeing. So definitely stay tuned for that interview.
Absolutely. So, but, speaking of that Bluebird, the financial numbers, the financial earnings that were released, and again, really driving the point home on why Bluebird has tapped Britton Smith to be both the president and CEO starting essentially end of September, beginning of October. Revenue grew by 13% to $333 million, with an adjusted EBITDA hitting a record of $48 million with a 14.5% margin. So looking at that, that profit over, margin over expenses and whatnot. So definitely continuing to see some big numbers from Bluebird, and a lot of it is really being driven by the electric school buses. So we're going to have an exclusive sit-down interview with Britton that we are planning for our October issue. So stay tuned for that one.
And I know he was on the podcast previously, so I don't know what episode that was. I can't specifically plug it off the top of my head, but he was also on the podcast. So check out that episode.
It was a few weeks ago. So check that out at stnonline.com. Taylor, in other news, it feels like we're talking a lot about electric school buses. Obviously, that's really big in the news cycle right now. Rising vehicle insurance costs, we're seeing that across the board. Certainly, I don't know about you, Taylor, but I've seen my wife and my premiums double basically over the last year. The Consumer Price Index actually earlier this year for the month of February and January actually showed that it was the largest 12-month spike in vehicle insurance rates since 1976. Taylor, I was 2 years old and you were but a sparkle in your mother's and father's eyes at that time. But certainly folks are paying more now for insurance. We're seeing just, costs across the board go up. And again, whether it's a diesel bus, gasoline, propane, CNG, school districts are going to be paying more. And I know that there are special rates a lot of times for fleets and municipal programs. But certainly we're hearing some grumblings that in terms of electric school buses, those insurance rates are going to skyrocket as well. Because as we know, one of the main indicators for insurance is the cost of the vehicle. So if you go out and you say you have a Honda Accord and you're paying X a month, but then you go out and you buy a brand new Mercedes-Benz E350, that your premiums are going to jump. And that's what we're starting to see in the electric school bus market.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't even think about that. I'm sure transportation directors, it's on their mind, but it wasn't something that was like directly in the forefront of my mind, like how is insurance rates going to impact electric school buses? And so reading that special report that's on my website, it was so enlightening to me just to know the impact of these electric school buses. So it's not just, charging infrastructure. It's not just buying the buses, but now you also have to consider how insurance is going to play a role in this.
Absolutely. And that special report at stnonline.com, it notes that in addition to the increased just purchase cost of those buses, and again, so far, we've seen those purchase prices essentially taken care of in some way, shape, or form by a federal or state grant, or even some private funding. So, as we move forward and we're talking about the total cost of ownership, now hopefully the insurance rates come down. But as we've seen so far with inflation, while the inflation rates have cooled, you go up 9%. That resets the pricing structure for everything. So even when prices do come down, if they do, they don't come down that much. They're never going to reset to where it was before or below that. And if they do, then there's probably something much worse going on with the economy. But this article points out that that purchase cost is just one factor. And we hear so much about electric school buses. One of the benefits in terms of total cost of ownership is obviously the reduced fuel. Now there's a caveat to that with electricity rates. If you need to have the proper charge management and load management to ensure that your rates are remaining, at a fraction of what you would be paying for in terms of diesel fuel or gasoline. We know that propane gets those incentives, so that's going to be pennies on the dollar in comparison to a diesel, or a third of the cost. But the same thing with electric. You need to make sure that you are charging at the right time and in the right way, and really tracking your usage and tracking it against peak times to ensure that you're getting that benefit. So that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the savings. We've talked a lot about the savings in the garage. So from a maintenance standpoint, obviously you have no fuel filters anymore to change, no oil filters. So you go from 1,000 moving parts to a dozen or so in an electric vehicle, give or take. But there's other considerations. And as we've reported, depending upon the repair, some of these parts are more expensive. If you're buying these low rolling resistance tires that are rated for electric vehicles, they're more expensive. So certainly, that is driving a lot of the insurance premiums going up. As we all saw last year, Hertz, the rental car giant, they sold off the vast majority of their electric vehicles from their fleet, primarily because of the cost of ownership tied to insurance. Those claims were just astronomical. And I've heard that from other people who own electric vehicles. So certainly just kind of the latest topic or issue to look at when we're looking at electric school buses. But staying in that lane for maintenance, Taylor, we are in our August fleet management month here in the magazine. And as you did last week with our guest, Tino Gustafson from Suffolk Transportation on Long Island in New York, when you're talking with Scotty a little bit later, certainly the issue of parts and inventory plays a big role in efficiencies and in cost savings in shops across the nation. And here we are, start of school again, right? You've either gone back to school or you're going to here in a matter of days or a week or two. That definitely, is one of the big line items in transportation directors' budgets. And while school for the most part, in most places, they stop during the summer months. There's still, of course, some summer school, extended year. There's some special programs, but those school buses, those mechanics and technicians, those folks are on the clock year round.
Yeah, and I talked to Tino and Scotty also in the August issue for the parts and inventory management special report that you were alluding to. And what stood out to me is something super interesting. So when we do our monthly surveys to transportation directors, garage maintenance professionals, it came back that 16% said their maintenance operation is paper free. So that's out of 61 responses. So that's over 80% of garages are still relying on paper, some form of another, to do things in the garage, to process inspections or diagnosis on vehicles. And so that's really surprising to me, especially since there is technology and there is software out there that can better streamline these garages and these operations. And I'm sure I'm biased because I am more prone to like growing up with technology. So that just makes sense to me, just to have technology easily available and to make things easier. But the fact that these garages are running their operations without some sort of technology is really surprising to me. So I talked to Tino about, how he uses a system called Hub, and it's through Napa Auto Parts. And so he was kind of explaining to me that he doesn't even really think about the parts management part of it. It's just something that gets ordered as needed. He goes to his window, he gets the part that he needs, he goes back to his bus. So something so simple as that, but could cut the day's hectic workload out just having that system.
Absolutely. And it's, been a long conversation in the industry with the introduction of technology that we've been, watching and over the last 20, 30 years that with school district budgets being what they are, and transportation historically being down the rung of the ladder in terms of funding priorities, getting that technology into these operations, into these facilities, has been a second thought or afterthought for a lot of school districts. And even those that we are seeing that are adopting technology or have adopted technology, I hear all the time from, for example, the routing manufacturers who say, well, if we could just only get our clients and our customers to use the products, the suites to their full potential. And I think that with just all of the competing priorities that transportation departments and transportation directors are contending with. Of course, one of the main right now is the driver and mechanic shortage, and I think just the labor shortage in general across the board. We say it over and over again. These folks are just are kicking like ducks. They're trying to be calm above the water, but below their webbed feet are just are kicking up a storm. They're trying to stay afloat. They're just trying to get through the day. So I think that's where the power of what we're seeing emerging right now with AI enabled software. We're seeing it across the spectrum from a safety standpoint, especially with the school bus and what it can do on and around the school bus for safety for students and for drivers, but also in terms of what it can do for processes, right? And that we heard that tale a lot over the summer at our STN Expos, where it's emerging now, and it is available now, and it's just getting more profound. The power that AI can bring, and not from a generative standpoint, not talking about Chat GPT, not talking about creating images out of nothing. Those things are cool, and those things have their place sometimes in a professional life in terms of just personal efficiency and making sure that we can get things done during the day, self-management, right? But from a fleet standpoint, there's a lot of power there to harness in terms of the diagnostics that you were mentioning, Taylor, and the reporting that can pull together all the information that might have taken days or weeks or maybe even months or longer to pull together. Now, almost at the click of a keystroke, you can have that delivered to you. So I think that we're definitely seeing a revolution coming in terms of how we use AI. And I know that term, that acronym, scares a lot of people. But I think if you look at it as a tool, just like we look at school buses, really, they're a tool to get a job done. I think AI is going to emerge as that tool to help garage professionals, fleet operators, fleet directors, even school bus drivers, trainers, to just get more out of their workday and work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, and it's a good segue into my technology super users issue for the September issue. I'm really talking with directors how they use this technology and how they use it to the fullest capability, but also how it can help in safety situations. So definitely stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. Well, before we transition over to your guest, Taylor, Scotty McKenzie, let's hear a message from another one of our sponsors.
Hey guys, what do software, hardware, and safety have in common? One word: TransFinder. At the STN Expo in Reno, TransFinder won 3 Innovation Choice Awards, voted on by STN Expo attendees for best software, best hardware, best safety technology. TransFinder's Route Finder plus routing solution and apps, Stop Finder and Wayfinder, are well known in the industry. Not everyone realizes TransFinder provides hardware like card readers, tablets, and mounts. And as for safety, Patrol Finder for schools is TransFinder's latest solution designed to make buses and campuses safer. TransFinder's president and CEO, Antonio Civitella, said the recognition means so much because it's voted on by STN Expo attendees. Civitella said, "We know a lot is riding on TransFinder because a lot is riding on those yellow buses that travel through our communities. TransFinder must continue to innovate as more is being expected of transportation departments from district leadership as well as parents." Learn more at transfinder.com. That's transfinder.com.
Hello, nation. I am back with another 2024 Garage Star. So I'm excited to welcome Scotty McKenzie, the shop foreman for Fulton County Schools in Georgia, to the podcast. Thanks for jumping on, Scotty.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I know you said it's been a crazy day this morning, but what's a typical day look like for you?
Honestly, it depends on the time of year and the temperature. Today, especially a lot of AC issues, a lot of new bus issues, and it's been a day.
Are all your buses coming in then with AC?
Every one of them, yeah. That just started this past year. So all of our big buses, special needs buses, everything will be AC.
Okay. So you guys are kind of navigating that.
Yeah, it's just started. It's definitely added some more work to us, but I'm sure the students enjoy it.
When are you guys starting school?
It's actually started this past Monday, the 5th.
Oh, okay. What was prep like getting, the buses ready for school? What was going on in the garage during that time?
Well, a lot. As you know, that every bus has to have a 20-day inspection before the start of school. So we had that going on, receiving new buses, all of our support fleet vehicles, on top of all the repairs, getting ready for school to start. So it's busy time of the year for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Besides AC, are you guys running anything else on your buses, technology-wise?
We just have acquired FireGator for us, fire suppression, all our lift buses. That's new to us, so we're figuring that out. We're using Angel Tracks camera systems, AT&T phones with GPS lockbox, cradles. All of our seats are equipped with seat belts, even on our 72 capacities. That's another thing we're dealing with. It's changing a lot lately. A lot of equipment upgrades, safety issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you mentioned fire suppression systems. So what made you guys go with those? Because I know a lot of districts haven't really jumped on that train.
Well, we still don't have them on our 72s. It's just our lift buses. It gives them more time to get the students off, but we went to a different system.
Okay.
So we got a halo that sits above the engine rather than having the sensors that had before. Everything's kind of more compact. Seems to be a better system.
Okay. So when this new technology comes on the buses, like that's on you and your guys to kind of maintenance it essentially?
We do maintain it, and unless it's still under warranty, then yeah, it definitely falls to us.
Okay.
We learn and adapt to it.
Are you guys doing any additional training or any training in general for the start of the school year?
Not as much as I'd like. There's only so much time in a year. If anytime we make a bus purchase, it comes with training. So I try to set that up, and any opportunity I can receive from any of our vendors, I'll take that too. It just depends, when it's available.
Okay. And I know you've been at Fulton County for almost 20 years or
Almost.
Nearly. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously there's been a lot of changes since you first started. What did the progression kind of look like?
Technology has came so far. When I started here, we were working on paper. Everything was paper and pencil work orders, check-off sheets, and the buses had minimal equipment on them. They had a two-way radio, no cameras. It was, just basic stuff. Everything was a lot more simple, a lot easier to fix, a lot less computers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely came a long way, and a lot of it's made our job easier too.
Okay. What interests you in, the mechanic world? Is it something that you wanted to do? And like, how did you kind of get started with Fulton County?
Well, actually my uncle worked for the maintenance department, working on schools and whatnot. And that's what got my interest in it. But as far as mechanical stuff, I've always had that, want to know more. When I bought my first truck, I was 15, and I completely disassembled it and put it back together just so I could learn how stuff worked. And I still do the same thing now. I enjoy figuring out problems and learning how stuff works, and that leads me on to be able to problem solve better.
Okay. So what's been one of like your biggest challenges maybe recently, or something you got stuck on that you're like, shoot, I really need to figure this out, that's kind of stumped you?
Honestly, I don't want to sound terrible, but as far as mechanical issues, we're pretty good at figuring out things. So I think the biggest challenge of any of it is trying to get mechanics now. We're short-staffed and have been for quite some time, and that's the biggest challenge right now is just getting people in here to work.
Are you guys actively recruiting?
We are. We have 2 positions open now, one for a support fleet tech and then a bus fleet as well.
Okay. So what is your total people in the shop right now then?
Currently, we have 10 bus techs, we have 2 body shop techs, and then a support fleet tech.
Okay. And I know you guys run a big operation there. You got a lot of buses.
525 of them, yeah. And we just we're receiving a new order of 50 right now. So it's a lot of turnaround.
And you guys are running propane.
Over 300, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big adoption. So kind of talk about that. What made you guys want to go with propane? Obviously you've been there for 20 years, so you've kind of seen the progression and the conversations.
I have, and I was totally against it to start with because I knew diesels, knew how to fix them, and they were simple because I knew it. But ever since propanes came along, our job has definitely gotten easier. They do have their problems, but you don't have any emission faults to deal with. Everything's cheaper. Oil changes, instead of 30 quarts, you have 7. And everything's just a lot less expensive, a lot easier, quicker.
Do you know why, the district decided to go with propane?
Emissions, yeah. I mean, because emissions have gotten so strict, you can have a bus down for, a week or 2 waiting on DPF parts, exhaust parts to come in. It's just, not only that, you have the write-ups from them, call complaints because they're smoking, and all that's went away.
Are you guys noticing a cost savings at all, too, to running the propane?
Huge. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like I said, you 30 quarts to 7 quarts. The spin-on filter is $5 versus $50. The air filters, everything's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped a lot.
Okay.
Plus, you have no fuel filters other than the propanes, and every 50,000 miles. So it's quite a bit cheaper.
Yeah. So obviously you were against it at first. So what kind of piqued your interest to be like, okay, wait, these propane buses actually aren't so bad?
Again, I'm going to go back to emissions.
Okay.
They were becoming a headache, and they still are what diesels we have, but propane, you don't have any of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just essentially a gas car, just bigger.
And you guys are doing all fueling on site?
Yeah, we have a 8 dispenser fuel island here at our location.
Okay.
Our South shop has one as well.
Okay. And have you looked at, or are you running any other clean vehicles or electric or anything like that?
Well, we do have one electric bus. It's a 2017-18 model. And it's running her out currently.
Okay. Have you guys had to do any maintenance on that or any training?
We have done some training, and there's not a lot of maintenance upkeep other than just the normal bus stuff, but it has had some issues. It's had to been repaired through the dealer, but as far as maintenance, there's really none on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just the typical maintenance that you would have with any other bus, right?
Yeah, minus the engine and transmission.
Right.
It does have a oil-filled air compressor that we have to service, but that's it.
Okay. So one of our August issues talked about, innovations and AI kind of in the bus garage. Are you guys looking at any, high-tech solutions, or have you you said, when you started, it was all paper. So you've adopted technology, obviously.
For sure.
What does that kind of look like?
As far as AI, I've not heard anything. Like I said, in the shop, we've went to all dealer software for diagnostics. We have a fleet software. It's called STEMS, which helps us keep track of repairs, cost. Our fueling, we have Fuel Master, which activates the dispensers, and it also keeps up with mileage. How many times the vehicle's fueled, so we can track that if we need to. And we've also have an in-house Napa, which talks to both systems. And as far as parts go, we don't keep track of them at all. We just simply walk over to the window and say, hey, I need this part. So it's on them to do that, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Expanding a little bit on the parts inventory, I know we talked about it for a special report in the August issue, but obviously it's streamlined your operation. You kind of talked on that. How did the supply chain impact that at all?
We have definitely had some issues receiving some of the parts. I mean, it's not a huge problem. Fortunately, what we've done is any surplus buses, if we needed something, we just go swap them out. That way we keep our buses rolling, but we've not really had anything down for an extended period of time because of parts.
Okay.
So,
are you finding that you keep more of certain parts in stock
sure.
just because you might not get them?
We do, specifically body parts. That's, as I said earlier, we do have a body shop, and Bluebird bumpers, for whatever the reason, bumpers, they're a high commodity. So we do try to stock a couple of those just to have on hand.
Well, it makes sense too, because bumpers probably need to get replaced if you get in a little fender bender or something. So
that happens quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys have streamlined the parts inventory, your vehicle diagnostic system.
Right. Yeah. Everything's, to my knowledge, I mean, it's good. I'm sure it can be better. But as far as our diagnostics go, again, we've adopted all dealer software, so it makes everything streamlined. When you try to diagnose, program, all that stuff's right there in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to put you on the spot this morning now.
Oh, boy.
But if you could have any technology in the bus garage, it doesn't even have to be invented yet. You could invent it right now on the podcast. What is something that you would like to take into the shop?
Nap time? No, I'm joking. Honestly, if I could adopt anything, it would be maybe even weekly training from every vendor. That way, if my guy has a question, he already knows the answer. Because I don't know everything, I never will, and I will find it for my guys. But training is everything.
I love that because I gave you so much freedom and you could have created some sort of flying, parts delivery service right to you, but you still chose training. So I think that's really important. And it shows, how important training is.
Mm-hmm. It's either that or a robot that will do my job. No.
You don't want that.
No, I'm kidding. No, it would definitely be training. Mm-hmm. That helps everything for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much for jumping on, Scotty. I really appreciate it. And congratulations again on being a Garage Star.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much, Taylor and Scotty, for joining this episode. Great interview. And as always, we appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder and IC Bus. And visit stnonline.com for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. And I want to extend a special thank you to all who attended our STN Expos, both in June, STN Expo East in Indianapolis, as well as our record attendance out in Reno at STN Expo West. Great time, super informative. Folks, you can still catch up on all the happenings at stnonline.com. Head over to our event news. We've got photo galleries, we got videos, we got tons of articles. And then here we are, TSD conference is open for registration. It's hard to believe it's less than 3 months away. So you still have time to get your super early bird discount of $200. Act today. That expires on August 23rd. So here you go, only another about, a week or so away before the price goes up. And as always, subscribe to School Transportation Nation podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume your pods. Catch up on that new weekly episode and stay in touch and stay a part of the nation. Thank you all, folks, and we'll see you next week.